Good morning, Tallahassee. It's time to Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Now, here's your host, Aslan Hajavandi.
Good Friday morning. Welcome into the program. It's called Wake Up War Chant. I'm Aslan. That's Corey Clark right across the glass. I can see him. And since it's Friday, we brought in a special guest, the managing editor of warchant.com. Hope everybody home's doing great. Ira, how are you, man?
I'm great, guys. Happy Friday.
Yeah, man. Ira Schoffel. I'll give you the full introduction, which you deserve, man.
I'm not used to being on the radio with Ira and not being able to see him.
Yeah, this is
kind of weird. What are you wearing, Ira?
I don't know if it's appropriate for me to tell. It's early in the morning, Corey.
Fair enough.
I don't know if we need
Sorry,
to go that
it's
far.
just, my mind wanders, just wondering what was going on over there.
All right, I think probably the one person who's looking most forward to the weekend besides Michael Langston's probably Ira, because he's been working like crazy, man. You've had all sorts of stories go up on War Chant this week with signing day having come and gone. One of those stories that probably most folks resonated with the most was the listicle, right? The listicle of sorts, of the top 10 reasons or the top 10 things that Willie Taggart did to really salvage this sort of recruiting class. From that list, is there like one or two things that if you had more, if you were still writing in a newspaper and you needed 10 inches, or I don't know how long they measure you guys and that sort of stuff. And
if you could only have three things.
Yeah, there you go. You take over, Corey.
There you go. If you could only have three things, Ira, on that listicle, what would have been the only three?
Wow, I don't know if it's like picking your children, Corey. I don't know. It was beefy for a listicle.
Yeah, I don't mean to diminish it. It's a full-out column pretty much, but just itemized very nicely.
But 10 things. I don't know. I just think at every turn, I think he really made the right decision. I think that, the big thing right off the bat was the first thing I mentioned, and they weren't really in order, but I do think, he analyzed the situation correctly when he first got the job and said, the early signing period's in 2 weeks, and I'm not going to beat all these other schools for these kids. There's no way I'm going to flip all these kids to Florida State and be able to sell Tallahassee and FSU, and I really don't even know what I'm selling yet. And so what he did was he just went to a bunch of these guys who were either committed to Oregon or other schools and just said, look, man, just give me some time. I'm not telling you have to sign with me, but please don't sign with these other schools right now. Just give it a little time. Give me a chance to bring in a staff so you can meet who these coaches are going to be. We'll bring you in for visits. Your family will meet these coaches, and then you can make a decision. And if you decide to go somewhere else, so be it. And I think that was really smart. I think the temptation for a lot of coaches, especially getting a gig like FSU, is, man, I got to go make a splash. I got to go out and get as many of these guys, flip guys as fast as I can for that early signing period. And I think just kind of getting guys to give him some time was really smart.
I agree. Corey, thoughts?
I wasn't listening. No, I agree with that. I think
nothing new.
Yeah, I just think the biggest obstacle he had, even more than a staff, was that early signing period. It was the wrong year to be transitioning to a place like Florida State. You come to Florida State, man, any other year in the last 30. You come to Florida State in December, you still have a good chance with a lot of the Rivals 100 kids, the top 100 kids on whatever. We'll use Rivals.
Yeah,
whatever ranking system you want to use. You have a good chance turning a lot of those kids into commits and making them seriously think about Florida State. Well, half of his pool was gone.
And I also think if I had to pick another really important one, I think that kind of the work they did, I call it reconnaissance, that David Kelly, the receivers coach, did to kind of evaluate the roster. I think they took, it's one thing to look at a depth chart or look at a roster and say, okay, we've got 5 linebackers back, we've got 4 receivers back, we've got, and just look at the sheer numbers. And I think that's how most people assume it's done, and that's how they decide what their needs are. But they really did a lot of research. I mean, Willie Taggart himself in person going to the bowl practices and really observing and making decisions for himself based on, which of these kids are you going to be able to count on, which of these kids are projects, which of these kids maybe FSU signed them, but I don't think they're going to fit in my offense or defense. And then the other side of it was, that work that David Kelly did. And at the time, I think David Kelly, we thought he was going to be like the player personnel guy, the guy kind of helping orchestrate the roster. Turns out he ends up being the receivers coach when Willie Taggart was unable to to get Ron Dugans to join the staff, and he slid in there. But he did a lot of the preliminary work in terms of background research. I mean, it really sounds like, from talking to people that David Kelly reached out to, it was almost like he was doing background work on all these different players, trying to find out everything he could find out, because that was going to also determine what kind of players they were looking to find in this signing class.
Ira Schoffel joining us, the managing editor of WarChant.com. This is Wake Up War Chant here on ESPN 97.9 Tallahassee. We're brought to you by the good folks at For the Table Hospitality. Go check them out over at College Town, Madison Social, Township, and Central. One of the things that also Willie mentioned about how vital the bowl sort of season was for him, that I think he mentioned at the Car Museum, was the fact that he also used the time to sort of evaluate the assistant coaches.
Yeah.
Which really shows you, obviously, and he mentioned, he's like, listen, things are going to be very different around here. And the fact that he kept just Odell really shows you how much of a change he wants to do, just kind of in terms of culture.
Man, that's a good point. I had that in the column, and I pulled it out because that really wasn't what I was writing about, but I did want to address it at some point. I'm glad you brought it up, because he did. And the way he phrased it was awesome. He said, I used the bowl practices to evaluate, or to look at which coaches I wanted to be coaching our kids and which ones I didn't want to be coaching our kids.
Yeah.
And
one guy made it. One guy.
And, there were a couple, a few, 3 or 4 or 5 that were still kind of in limbo. And that's not to say that those guys aren't decent coaches or couldn't be coaches for somebody else, but it shows you that he really has a specific goal in mind. And that's one of the things that, he talked about at the earlier press conference when we spoke to him. I think it might have been, I don't know if Corey asked the question, but I know Corey made a point to bring it up. But the fact that in his earlier jobs, he felt like he made some mistakes in hiring coaches and maybe rushed to hire coaches. And this time, man, he took forever, and people were getting so antsy. But it seems like at the end of the day, he wound up with a really good staff.
One thing that shouldn't go overlooked, and it doesn't really matter anymore. The season's over, that staff is over. But he didn't keep any of those guys, but all those guys did stay through the bowl game to try to get to, I thought that was very admirable of those guys, because I think, man, there were only 2 or 3 that were even in play probably. All the other guys knew that Willie was bringing in his own guys. So for them to, it really seemed to matter to them, at least some of them, it really seemed to matter. The one I think about the most is Randy Sanders. It mattered to them to win those games, and they weren't hard games by any means, but just to show up, to be there for the kids, because they had just had their head coach leave them behind. And I thought that was a really nice thing that those guys did, even though they oversaw one of the worst seasons, the worst season in 40 years in Florida State. It was still a nice, cool way for them to finish.
All right, so
it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for them to keep their jobs, but it was honorable. We respect the effort.
Yeah,
sure.
With the samurai and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Fight with honor, live with honor, all that kind of good stuff. All right, so as we look ahead now, Ira, I don't know so much of it is just kind of drilling down to sources and hearing what's going on with off-season conditioning and workouts of that nature, but with so many changes happening on offense, James Blackman, we're assuming, is going to be taking most of the snaps, obviously, with the first-team offense. I don't want to, we got to go to spring football now because signing day is over. It's the natural progression to go there. But how much should we gauge and judge Willie Taggart's offense on what we're going to see in spring with a guy like James that, I don't know if do we really think he's the best sort of natural fit for this sort of up-tempo, fun, fast-paced offense?
Yeah, man, it's hard to tell. And I've talked to some people who have been in coaching but watched Florida State intently last year. And one of them has coached at the highest levels of football and is not real confident in either DeAndre Francois or James Blackman as being a guy that's going to take your program to the next level. And it's a guy I respect his opinion greatly. And there are other people who, think that it's, and this is kind of how I feel. I kind of feel like it's hard to judge James Blackman based on what he was thrown into. I mean, we don't know how Jameis would have handled being a true freshman with Jimbo. And so I think it's hard to judge him. And I think he looked a lot better, certainly in those last couple of games, certainly in the bowl game, with Randy Sanders kind of simplifying things. So I think it's hard to judge him, but I do think he's going to have to implement the offense this spring, whoever's there. I mean, DeAndre Francois is not going to be full contact, but I do think he'll be able to do certain things. He won't be able to do maybe the team drills, but I think he'll be able to do certain things. And Bailey Hockman's still there. We talked about it on headlines yesterday briefly, just that he's kind of a guy that we've kind of all written off because I think he falls in that mold of the guy who didn't get immediate playing time while somebody else did. So you just kind of assume, okay, they can't play. But he was injured in preseason last year. That set him back. And, I've heard some good things about him. So I think, he might be in the running as well. And then, again, I just think he's going to have to put the offense in place for everybody else. And then, we'll see if Francois gets back healthy. But I don't know, man. When you look at this team, I think there's a lot of promise for this team. But I understand where people are coming from who feel like there might not be a quarterback on this roster that's going to get you back into the playoff right now.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Blackman at the end of the year was good. Not just the 2 games against the Sun Belt. He was really good against Florida, and his receivers dropped a ton of passes. He still won the game, still made plays when he had to. I just thought the last month of the season, he looked like a different guy, and he was really coming on. And then obviously those last 2 games with a faster tempo, able to walk back to the sideline, not having to cringe. Yeah. All that really seemed to play. He just seemed to play much more free. And I think he's a talented kid, man. I think he showed he has some real ability. He's not a great runner, but I don't know that you don't have to be a 4-4 guy in Willie's offense. You just have to be able to take some hits, because if you're going to be running the ball. But you also have Cam Akers and Patrick and, other guys, the kid they got from Buford 2 days ago.
Anthony Grant.
You got a lot of really good running backs. I don't think you're going to be counting on your quarterback to do a ton of running.
Yeah, I want to go back almost and look at tape from Oregon. We got to wrap things up here, but I want to go back and look at the tape almost from Oregon to see how well things are going with Justin Herbert, which was like their sophomore quarterback.
And he didn't run at all.
Yeah, he was not a very graceful guy, and that's what I think with James. He's just not a very graceful runner. I mean, maybe get some weight on him, he might be a little more assertive running the ball. But we think of Quentin Flowers, I think, when we think of Willie, and just a natural sort of fast runner. But plenty to sort of dissect and talk about over the coming days, weeks, and months. Ira, thanks for your time, man. We always appreciate it. The big guy joining us, Ira Schoffel, the managing editor from WarChant.com.
Thanks, guys. And Corey, I'm going to go get dressed now, okay?
Great, man. Send me a pic.
Hashtag awkward. All right, with that, let's go to a break. Let's reset things. We'll come right back with more Wake Up War Chant. You're listening to ESPN 97.9 Tallahassee.
You're locked in to Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Welcome on back into a Friday edition of Wake Up War Chant. I'm Aslan alongside Corey Clark. You're listening to ESPN 97.9 Tallahassee. So we had some feedback from some of the videos that we did yesterday, or rather on Wednesday for National Signing Day. Folks enjoyed you and Gene talking about Taggart's press conference and breaking things down. Then Michael Langston and myself broke down the Car Museum signing party and kind of our thoughts from there. And it was long. It was a long day Wednesday, man. It was a long day. It was raining, and I have this like Trump-esque comb over kind of because I'm losing the battle. I can't come home.
Calm down, buddy.
I can't come home like you and Jeff. I
can't tell if you got the head for it or not.
No, I don't. I think I'd look sickly. I would look very sickly if I shaved my head. And then,
it's not quite as round as Jeff and I's.
Yeah, it's more oval. It's more oblong, so it would not be well. But somebody literally decided to go ahead and put a thread on War Chant. They're like something about, the video from the Car Museum. And then I clicked on it, and it said, "What is on top of that guy's head?" Somebody, and the girl who cut my hair in Dothan before I moved down here even said, she's like, "When I saw you on TV, she's like, I thought you were wearing those Jewish caps. I thought you were wearing one of those Jewish hats." I'm like, "Oh, that's called a yarmulke." No, I wasn't wearing one of those. But yeah.
So he referred to you as that guy.
That guy then said he needs to change his name or he needs a nickname. And I'm like, ironically enough, I had a fake stage name when I was in Alabama, but now I have my real name. So I'm just going to call myself Aslan. I'm going to be like a footballer in Brazil. I'm just going to go by one name. Like Mike Martin just goes by a number. I'm just going to go by my first name.
When I told my girlfriend when I was doing the show, I go, "Yeah, with the new guy we got, Aslan," and she goes, "Like the lion?"
Right.
That's the first thing she said.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "I don't even know that reference, but it was in the video, the Welcome to War Chant video that you made, the 4-minute video." Because I didn't even know, what's it from? The Witch in the Wardrobe?
Yeah, Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe.
Yeah, I had no
book.
idea.
It was a book. I read the book, never saw the movies, but
so yeah, people know that. It's a recognizable name.
Yeah, like all right.
Your hair is not like a lion mane, though.
It was though, brother. Oh, it was, man. Those who know me, beautiful, luxurious flowing mane. But yeah, one of these days maybe I'll get the stones to go ahead and kind of just buzz it all off. But until then,
buzz it. You don't have to
No, I don't know.
Shave it all. Yeah,
Because
just
it's
if you buzz
thin.
it, not
Because
shave.
If I buzz it, it's so thin, man.
Yeah, I
That's
don't
going to
know,
look
man.
funky. I don't know.
I
It's
don't
just, hashtag first world problems, I guess. There's going to be a lot worse things going on in my life right now.
And it's black.
It
You know,
is.
it's jet black, so you got that going for you.
I guess. Is that what the ladies like? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anywho, all right,
More than
moving-
this, I promise.
Yeah, right. Whatever, man. Put the coconut. You put the coconut oil on top of it, like Jeff told you to.
No, I've never done that. I need to. I haven't though.
All right. So someone who's having obviously a good time of things right now is Willie Taggart, head football coach of the Florida State Seminoles. We're going to constantly talk about this until they actually kick a ball off and play tackle football against another intercollegiate football team. But just the whole fact that you mentioned it. After he had his press conference after signing day, just very soft-spoken. You mentioned he was a little more even soft-spoken that day. And it's just so different, man, to see somebody, again, that's so excited to be there. I mean, the last 5 minutes at the car museum, he was just basically just kind of almost not pleading with the fans, but just trying to open up his chest and just be look into my heart, people, and just realize how excited I am to be here and how much work I want to put into it. And was there ever a burnout? I'm trying to think how we got to this point with the guy previously, just because he did so well for so long, and then everything just kind of fell off. I mean, can Willie? I mean, is it a youthfulness that makes us believe that it's sustainable? Not only the recruiting prowess, but hopefully the game planning and things of that nature.
And I think it's just different. Bobby Bowden had a lot of love for Florida State, and Bobby Bowden accomplished a heck of a lot more than Jimbo Fisher did. But by the end, obviously, it got ugly. Not just on the fan side, but Bobby wanted to stay another year. First he wouldn't set his terms, and then he's like, I just want one more year, when it looked like he might not get that. And then finally he acquiesced and was forced out, really. He didn't acquiesce, he was forced out, which it was time for. Now, Jimbo Fisher was the same person in 2009 when he took that job, personality-wise and process-wise and program-oriented-wise, as he was in 2016. Now, obviously, his family situation was a little different, but he was the same personality. But Florida State fans,
16 or 17? You're saying this past season?
No, yeah, I'm sorry, 17.
Okay.
Yeah, Florida State fans just they were so starved for a head coach that was that involved. You know what I mean? So they loved it. They loved that it was just so different from the guy beforehand. Even though he coached with Bowden, obviously Jimbo Fisher and Bobby Bowden couldn't be more different in their personalities.
And I'd love the articles that always come out about, Jimbo's got the right mix of Bobby and Nick, and it's like,
no, he didn't have any Bobby.
No, none.
Which is fine, but he didn't. He was he just none. Really, no trick plays. Wasn't real personal. Didn't like the booster tours. Just wasn't Bobby Bowden at all, except he wore garnet and gold. But Florida State fans loved that at the time. It's just different. This is different. We have a coach that's putting in 60 hours a week or 80 hours a week and is on the phone all the time and loves to recruit and has a vision. And so I think Florida State fans are doing that now because it's the opposite of what they've had for the last 8 or 9 years. It just feels completely different. And obviously the new car is you always love it more. You just always love it more at the beginning because it's so different than what you're used to. And they are different, man. It's kind of remarkable how Florida State has gone in the last decade from such three different guys. But I just think Willie, he's kind of captivating, and he's captivated the fan base right now because he is so different. And I just think, just like in 2010 when everybody was ready for a change, they saw what was happening at Florida with Urban Meyer, and they felt like they were getting lapped. Not felt like it, they were getting lapped by the University of Florida.
They're getting knelt on at halftime.
Yeah, and that stopped really quickly. Literally the next year, that all stopped happening. They've won once since. So things can change really quickly. So Florida State fans were in love with the idea of someone like Jimbo Fisher in 2010. A micromanager, a guy that was on top of everything, that didn't delegate. It was all his program, and he had all these visions. Well, now they're in love with this idea too. And again, we'll see how it works out. But I just think it's pretty fascinating how they've gone from three different personalities, three different styles of coaching in a matter of a decade.
See, I want to talk to a player like Cam Akers. I actually covered Cam closely when I was in Mississippi for his freshman and sophomore seasons. And everybody knew that he was special at that point. But really under the sort of assumption I am that, Cam Akers largely came to Florida State because of Jimbo Fisher, pro-style offense, and, the ability to get him to the NFL. But I wonder how much the difference between Jimbo and Willie is going to be a good thing, because I feel like in baseball, one of the biggest things they do, there's either players coach or, like really, you either go from Lou Piniella to a guy like Terry Francona, right? That's what teams usually seem to do in baseball. You either go from players coach or to
go from a strict disciplinarian to the opposite of that, and then back, if you have to.
Right.
Yeah.
And it feels like, well, they've gone from strict disciplinarian to players coach. And somebody made a comment to me like, hey, Aslan, stop trying to hint at the fact that Willie being friendly with the players and being hip and modern is a bad thing. And there, part of me was a little apprehensive about it because I feel like at the end of the day, you need to be able to put your foot down. But I feel like Willie's got the ability to do that. But want to hear from the guys and see how much the ones who came here for Jimbo that have to stay, that can't transfer, that don't have the graduate sort of option, how they're sort of coming around to Willie's sort of positive, more fun outlook.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, and we'll get to talk to them at some point, I'm sure, talk to these players, especially during the spring, to see how different it is. The whole vibe of the coaching staff, not just Willie, but the whole coaching staff and how different it is. I'm sure Greg Fry is hard on his offensive linemen. I bet you he's not hat whipping them. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's just differences. I bet Harlan Barnett, because Charles Kelly, I think, was a player's coach, much to his detriment at times, I think. Harlan Barnett doesn't strike me as somebody that will have a hard time yelling at someone or benching him if he doesn't play well or play hard. I think Charles Kelly at times struggled with that. So that's going to be interesting, too, just to talk to the players about the whole coaching staff. But, yeah, when it comes to Taggart, look, players, coaches last – They don't do well typically because it's easy to get walked over, but that's if they don't respect you. I feel like Willie Taggart is going to earn enough respect in that locker room that they're not going to want to walk all over him. And also, the proof in the pudding with Willie Taggart is he built a program at South Florida that the last 2 years won 21 games or whatever it was. Those were his players that won 21 games in 2 years. So it worked. I know this last year it was with Charlie Strong, who's a completely different coach, but the year before they won 10 games with Willie Taggart. He's not a player's coach that's okay going 7-5 or 6-6 or 4-8. That's not what he does. He wins games and he can build a culture. And I think at South Florida, that was his culture that just won 21 games in 2 years. So that lends me to think he's not recruiting those guys. He's recruiting guys that he knows won't do that. And then he earns their respect. And even though he's not, I don't think he's buddy all the time and patting them on the butt and asking about their girlfriends all the time, but he's got enough of that in him that I think they're going to think, okay, man, this guy cares about me, not just because I can run a slant route. He cares about me.
There's nothing cartoonish or buffoonish about the way he acts. Like when he tries to act, like when he tries to level with the kids, there's nothing that I've seen from him that I'm like, man, he's forcing it. It's just natural, man. And it's really awesome to kind of see that. Now, as we go to break, one thing we'll talk about when we come back from break is the fact that there's something I think that's really a valuable built-in asset for Willie Taggart that no one's really been talking a lot about. We'll try to break that down when we come right back here on Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 Tallahassee.
WarChant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. WarChant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WarChant30. That's WarChant30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WarChant30. WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.
The name of the show is Wake Up War Chant. I'm Aslan. He's Corey Clark. Thanks for being here. He's the senior writer for War Chant. I'm the director of digital media. But, whatever. I just do a little bit of here and there.
Do everything.
Yeah,
hands in a lot of pots.
Yeah, everyone does all these different tasks. Corey, you just write.
Well, yeah, do this,
You
though.
do the radio now, too. Yeah, so
I do this.
We need to change your title, like senior multimedia.
Well, no, I don't need multimedia in my name. But, writing is my, my occupation, really.
People love the columns. Clark column!
I think I'm best at. But, I try this. I dabble in this a little bit, too.
I feel like we need to have something that when you click on your link, like on Twitter or War Chant, just say, Clark column!
It could be me doing it. Hey, thanks for reading.
Yeah.
And then but then I can just read it to them.
It's all about marketing.
They don't even have to, I can just read my column in a video, and they don't even have to read anything.
No. Because
it's cool, right?
Because the only thing better than hearing you say something snarky is reading something that you wrote and imagining how it's
how I would say, it's
so it kind of ruins everything.
I don't want to take that away from people.
Things that never ruin a good time at lunch is free parking. Get on down to College Town if you want to visit Madison Social, Township, or Central, part of the For the Table Hospitality Group. There's free parking in the first 2 decks of the parking garage in College Town. Get on out there, get some lunch, enjoy yourselves, eat, be merry, and prosper, and all that kind of kind of good stuff. All right, so when we went to break, I mentioned one of the things that's sort of built into Willie Taggart's DNA that, I mean, people have talked about it, but, you and I have not been able to really discuss it at a large length, and we'll be checking off all these boxes here as the weeks and months come by before spring football starts.
And decades.
When does spring football actually begin?
We just got an email today. It's March 20th or something,
really?
somewhere like that. Yeah.
I'm not on those email lists yet, which I kind of happy about, because once you tell them put me on the email list, then you start getting the emails for diving and swimming and equestrian.
I know the spring game is April 14th.
Right. But one of the things that'll be, I think, obviously is going to be built in on Willie's side, and there's so many times that people
March 21st.
All right.
That was right.
Look at that. Look at you, man. Good stuff. Memory like an elephant.
The day after Pro Day, which is March 20th.
Yeah. So in baseball, catchers always seem to make some of the best managers. Really, historically, I think, right? I mean, is that not fair to say? Well, Willie, the fact that he actually played quarterback, and played for Jack Harbaugh, I think is a really cool thing. And and we heard about him mention, well, we didn't hear about, but we read what he told to Andrea Adelson from ESPN about what he expects from DeAndre Francois. Yes. Does that make you feel, I mean, is there reason to feel confident about that no matter who lines up under center against Virginia Tech on Labor Day, that it's going to be probably the best player on that team and the best fit for his offense?
Well, yeah, and it's going to be, he expects stuff out of his quarterbacks. And, we all thought Jimbo did too. And then with the Francois thing happen where he wasn't even at the game, he was Snapchatting in Orlando while his teammates were playing, and Jimbo defended it the next day or 2 days later.
Did he really? I felt like he just really gave some flimsy excuse almost.
He said, no, it happens all the time. Guys don't come to games all the time. And then he was asked, is that the player's prerogative? And he goes, yeah, player's prerogative. No, man, that's not on. I mean, you got a team, and that's senior day. I know Nate Andrews didn't play much last year, but heck, man, that's a senior. That's a guy that's been there for a long time. Go show some appreciation to him and Derek Nottie. Those are your teammates. But whatever, we don't have to get into that. But I thought that interview with Andrea was really enlightening, because he called Francois out and said, "Look, man, there's basically saying there's more to being a quarterback than just what you do on the field. You gotta be a leader, and you do. You got your teammates don't have to love you, but they have to respect you, and they have to think that you care about them. Chris Winkie was not beloved at all. When number one, he was 44 years old when he was here playing with 19-year-olds. He didn't really relate to them all that well, and he was kind of an ass. But they respected the tar out of that dude. And I don't know that the way DeAndre's handled himself on social media at times. Certainly the way he handles himself, apparently not going to meetings as much as he needs to, and the way he handled that game, that doesn't build respect and trust with your teammates. And you need that out of your quarterback. I think he's got a real shot to win that job, even if he's going to miss the spring. And I think that was Willie Taggart's kind of way to show that dude, man, get your act together. You've got a shot. We're going to need you. At some point, they're going to need DeAndre Francois in 2018. He needs to be ready, and he needs to be a teammate. And he hasn't really – even now, it doesn't seem like that's really resonated with him if Willie's still feeling the need to say that in early February. Like it apparently didn't get out of his system in late November, or it's still there.
Did Bobby play quarterback when he was in high school?
I think he played quarterback at Samford, too.
Yeah,
or Howard,
say,
whatever it was.
The last three head football coaches Florida State have had, they've been former quarterbacks at the collegiate level.
I would think that's kind of normal, right? Because it's usually an offensive guy. Most head coaches, I think, have offensive backgrounds, and if you're going to be a head coach, you probably played quarterback at some point. I think Walt Bell's going to be he was sort of a quarterback before they turned him into a receiver.
So, I mean, fair enough. So we know that Jimbo obviously was a quarterback by trade. And so much of what we always talk about with him and Jameis, I don't know how much of it was the physical ability of Jameis that made Jimbo look so well, and vice versa. Jimbo obviously coaching Jameis, but just how rare of a person it would take to operate Jimbo's offense, because Jameis was old school in the fact that, I think he liked being yelled at. And I don't really like being yelled at, but he responded to it well. And I'm not trying to say kids are getting soft these days, but kids these days really aren't cut from the same cloth as Jameis, where they respond well to that sort of fierce criticism. And I think Willie has a better knack of that. And we saw the way that James Blackman performed when he didn't have somebody yelling at him the way that Jimbo would yell at EJ or James.
Well, yeah, and I don't think it's a societal thing like Jimbo would tell us when he go on as one of his diatribes.
Social media, man.
Because, Jameis was only 4 or 5 years ago. It's not like we're talking about the 1980s.
But he was programmed differently, though. I think,
he was wired differently, but Jimbo wasn't. And I think sometimes what makes a great teacher, in my opinion, or a great coach, is being able to communicate differently with different people. Some people don't react well to criticism. They shut down. Yep. Other people thrive on it. And vice versa. So other people, when you praise them too much, they get lackadaisical, and they need to be challenged. I feel like some of coaching is striking that balance. And Jimbo was just full bore the whole time. And it worked with Ponder. Ponder was one of those kids that took it really well. His dad played football here, and his dad was kind of a hard ass too. And so Christian had grown up in that in Texas. And then EJ, I don't think handled it all that well. Even though I got him drafted in the first round, I thought there were times where EJ was skittish and I don't think EJ maximized his potential here at all. And certainly I don't think Blackman did this last year. I just think to me, it was crazy to see Jimbo Fisher yelling at James Blackman coming off the field the exact same way he'd yell at a 3-year starter coming off the field. It feels like you'd switch that up a little bit. And I think, and I don't know, but I think Willie Taggart might have more buttons to push than just the one.
Right.
Well,
you say you don't think it's a societal thing, but, I mean, do you think Jake Fromm could get yelled at the way Jimbo yells at guys and get away? I don't think there's a lot of 5-star quarterbacks right now in the class of 2019
I'm saying, but I
20.
don't think kids in 1990 would have enjoyed that either. I think some of them would have shut down too. They might have been more used to it, maybe.
Right.
But I still think the mentality is still the same, that you're getting screamed at and you're getting told how bad you are. How do you respond to that? Do you shrink or do you rise up? And I think that's always been something coaches have had to deal with. That's what I meant by societal.
Okay.
Obviously, I think society is different now than it was even 6 years ago. But I think kids' reactions to negative coaching, positive comments and all that, I think that's always been an issue with coaches, how to deal with that.
The one thing that was going to hamstring Florida State, if Jimbo had stayed, obviously, was that contract financially. But I also think the fact that he's fishing in a pond that there's just no fish anymore. I don't think there's a lot of kids these days that respond to the sort of way that Jimbo wants to coach. And I don't know if that's a societal thing or not, but obviously with Willie and the way that we've kind of seen him, from a distance and how we've seen him interact with us, that he's, like you said, he's got the different buns. He doesn't, not everything is in fifth gear. He can kind of move it down a little bit. So that opens up plenty more doors and maybe even opens a door for him to be able to pluck a guy from a junior college or, some fifth-year guy to kind of come here and maybe compete. And I wonder if that's something that we'll be able to find out here in the coming weeks, if that's going to be an option for him.
I mean, we talked about that on headlines. Real quick before we get into that, though, I was going to say, I always made that point about Rick Trickett, that I think you cut with the way his coaching style, and it worked at times. It's fine. He had a great line in 13 and half of 14 when they moved Cameron Irving to center. His coaching style limited the prospects that you could recruit because some kids just were not going to. That's not enjoyable. They were not going to go play for him. Playing offensive line is hard enough. Being screamed at by a former Marine and hat whipped makes it doubly hard. It's just not enjoyable. And some of those guys love him. Rodney Hudson, loved Rick Trickett. Brian Stork was a perfect Rick Trickett recruit and player. Other guys struggled with it and I don't think ever really reached their full potential because of it. And also, you limited who you could recruit because they were scared away by the stories of the old man that was going to coach me that hard at Florida State's offensive line. So, again, I always thought that was odd that offensive line is probably the most important position other than quarterback on a football field. And you limited the number of people you could recruit. So some of the best 5-star players in the country, you had no shot at just because of how your coach coached. So you'd have to make reaches with 2 and 3 stars that sometimes worked out, like a Brian Stork or a Cameron Irving, who were switched from defense, or Brian Stork was a tight end. Some of them worked out, some of them didn't. But I think now you're going to be fishing from a bigger pool because there are going to be more offensive linemen that are going to be interested in Florida State because of Rick Trickett's not here, and that's not to. But smirch Rick Trickett in any way. He's a very good coach that knows what he's doing. His coaching philosophy just isn't for everyone. But going back to the fifth-year quarterback thing, I was wondering about that because I understand why Florida State would want one. But number one, how good is a guy going to be if he's leaving a school? And is he going to want to go to a place that has 2 dudes on the roster that have started for a year? You know what I'm saying? It's not like, but it's a depth chart that neither one of those guys know the offense. So that's the positive, is you're all learning it at the same time. But the other two guys have been here for a year, or have started for a year. Are you going to come in and get past both of them? That's what I wonder if it'll be appealing to guys looking to make that move.
Let's talk about that. Let's take a break. We'll be right back to wrap up the show on this Friday. It's Wake Up War Chant, ESPN 97.9 Tallahassee.
You're locked in to Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
The weekend in the horizon, wrapping things up right here on Wake Up War Chant. I'm Aslan. He's Corey Clark. Thanks for being here. The show, obviously, as always, brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. Check them out over in College Town, Madison Social, Township Central. Great food, great spirits, great times. Go enjoy yourselves, kids. So, Corey, you were walking us right down a nice little path in terms of talking about if there's going to be any numbers added to the roster in terms of quarterbacks and looking at the depth chart. If you're a fifth-year guy, why would you come to Florida State? And I mean, I guess I would look at it from the optimistic. I'll go with the glass full approach, which is very rarely my sort of case here. But I think you look at it and you say James Blackman, obviously had a mixed sort of, season as a true freshman quarterback. You don't know if his skill set will necessarily translate in terms of his being able to run gracefully. I think his arm is great. I like his decision making by and large for a true freshman.
And he's a tough kid.
Yeah.
And he cares.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to like about him.
Definitely. DeAndre, I would almost look at. And DeAndre, and so much of it's the unknown with the injury. Like, I'm not expecting him. I mean, I don't know him with a knee brace, even in August, how effective he's really going to be. And then we talked about the off-the-field stuff, that was sort of a problem. So if you can come to Tallahassee, you're healthy in the spring. I mean, who knows? Maybe James sprains his thumb. Maybe James sprains his ankle or something. Then he loses snaps, and then it's you and Bailey Hockman, a guy who hasn't got any live bullet action, and you've had 3 or 4 years starting somewhere. And it seems like we believe that Willie Taggart's going to run a fairly lethal, simplistic offense. So why not come to Tallahassee? Yeah,
and again, it's not like you're having to learn Jimbo Fisher's offense like Everett Golson did.
Route trees
in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
You're all learning the offense at essentially the same time. If you could get in here by the spring, which I don't know if you could because you still got to graduate, but. It's not like somebody has a huge leg up on you because they've been running the system for 3 or 4 years. So that's the appeal. I would just say, again, I think it's more for depth chart purposes. I don't think you're going to get a Russell Wilson. There's not many of those guys that come and grad transfer out. You're going to get you're likely to get an Everett Golson or a Malik Zaire type. I mean, the guys that just aren't that good. The guys that are really good aren't transferring. That's how life works. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's something that could just add depth, which would be nice. But again, I think your two quarterbacks, the most likely by far are the two guys that are already on the roster.
Agreed.
And maybe again, Bailey Hockman might have himself a shot because these guys don't know the offense either. He's kind of on equal footing with everyone right now. I don't think he's going to win the job. I don't know if he's really in contention, but he's got a shot. He's going to at least be in the mix because I do think that Taggart's going to have it truly open. If he plays well in the spring, maybe he can win the job somehow.
Right on. So in terms of needs being met on National Sign Day, Florida State, I think ultimately when the dust settled, they're number 10 in Rivals.com ranking. Linebacker was a position of need that they did not get. Quarterback was another position of need they did not get. But wide receiver was a position of need, and they seem to have knocked that one out the park, obviously, with who they brought in. I know you're not the recruit, Nick, but I do know you're working on a well, actually, no, you said like the first day, you're like,
dude, that's what I do.
Yeah, pay tribute to my multifaceted knowledge.
I get those clips of all the kids. I break them down, how their hips move.
First step.
First step mainly and putting their foot in the ground. What happens when can they put their foot in the ground and turn real quick, and what do the hips look like? And obviously ball skills. Those are the things I look for when I'm looking at wide receivers.
I can't believe I ever overlooked your knowledge of the position.
Yeah.
So with that said, let's walk right into it then. In terms of the offense, we don't know who's going to be a quarterback, but we don't even know who's really going to be out wide, do we?
Yeah, no, of course not. Again, it's all open. In the thing I wrote or I'm writing, depending on when you're listening to this, is that these guys, there's a chance they can play early. If you can believe it, Florida State fans, there will be freshmen that get on the field and play. I know you can't even fathom that. But obviously, you got to think Naquan and Keith Gavin have the best chances to play a lot. But these guys add a lot of depth and a lot of speed. And I think that's a really big deal. The kid from Washington's crazy fast.
Trayshawn Harrison.
And then the kid from Georgia's really fast and a long jumper. So you're talking about elite athletes that's what they want to do. They're not going to have them, again, the route tree and having to read a safety. It's, hey, man, you're running a post right here. Just go run past that guy or go jump up and make a play. And these guys, it seems like, they seem really excited. And, of course, they wouldn't not be at the recruiting party. I watched the video of the recruiting party because I wasn't there, but I watched the replay of it, and they were all really high on these receivers. It would be weird if they weren't. Like, right. This one's kind of a reach, guys. I don't see this kid ever playing. He might help out on special teams. Good kid, good parents, but he just doesn't have what it takes. You're not going to hear that, but watching the highlights, the way they talked about their speed, in their ball skills and the way they can go make plays is I think you're going to at least see a couple of them get on the field a lot this year. Willie wants that. That's what he wants 11 receivers on the roster because he wants to tire teams down. And you run 80, 85 plays in a game. Well, you can't do that with 3 receivers. You have to have a rotation. And the DBs are going to get tired while you got fresh bodies running past them. That's the whole point. Yeah,
the way he said it, I don't know what even the number is, but he's like, we've got 5 or 6 on scholarship, and we want, and I thought he's going to say, 8.
Yeah, he goes to 11.
We want 11. I'm like, whoa.
Well, that's like offensive lineman numbers there. Yeah. But that's the whole deal. You want those guys out wide. They can really run. They can really tire out a defense. You bring in more guys that do the same thing. You can't do it with 3 guys. And last year, literally at times, Florida State had 3 scholarship receivers because of injuries and because they refused to play freshmen.
All right, I hope this doesn't go off the rails here. How fair is it to judge? So we're judging everybody against Alabama, right? I mean, isn't that what we're doing?
Sure.
So is it fair to look at what DeAndre did in 3 quarters against them last September and think that maybe not so much he's not enough, but Jimbo's ways is not enough? Because, I mean, let's go back to 2012. Who's beat Alabama since 2012, right? Like Manziel and Texas A&M. 13.
Ole Miss beat him a couple times.
Ole Miss beat him twice, obviously. Auburn's beat him. I mean, teams
Deshaun Watson beat him.
Clemson. The teams that play the stuff that Jimbo despised, right?
Georgia almost beat him. Almost. But again, Georgia's offense wasn't doing anything the second half of the game. Did literally nothing. I think they hit the 180-yard pass and they did zilch.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that. It's hard. Nick Chubb isn't going to beat a team like Alabama. You need... And Jake Fromm's a very good quarterback. Played pretty well in that game. But you need dynamic quarterback that can make some plays with his feet. And then you also need a bunch of fast dudes out wide that can go make plays. Because occasionally, Alabama doesn't have Marlon Humphreys all the time or Minka Fitzpatrick's all the time. Sometimes they just have normal NFL players. They only have second-round picks out wide or third-round picks. They don't always have to have top 5 corners in the NFL draft. So, yeah, I mean, if you're judging it just by Alabama, which, I'll be honest with you, I don't know that Florida State is in that position right now to keep judging itself against Alabama. You judge yourself against Clemson. That's your number one priority because Clemson's basically on the same footing as Alabama. Alabama's better, but Clemson's the second best program in the country. So judge yourself by them. And they have a bunch of guys that go make plays out wide. And their offense goes up and down. Here's the thing. So Clemson lost a game each of the last 2 years to an ACC team, an inferior ACC team, and had some close games otherwise along the way. They also blow teams out. Like they will get up 40-0 on you in a hurry if you don't watch it. Florida State was never doing that the last 3 years. That just was not in the cards. Really, the last 4 years, 2014, they didn't do it either. That's not in the cards. I think this team will have some close games and will lose some close games. They will also blister some teams where it's out of hand in the third quarter because they will just overwhelm some teams with their speed and athleticism, which they weren't really allowed to do in the previous offense, in my opinion. Unless they had Kelvin Benjamin, Jameis Winston, an NFL offensive line, and Devontae Freeman and Rashad Green.
Yeah, because the things you could say then, well, listen, Clemson had Deshaun Watson, they had Mike Williams, they had Wayne Gallman, they had Jordan Leggett. But then you look at Ole Miss. Ole Miss 2014 that beat Alabama in Oxford. They had Laquan Treadwell, so did 2015. But 2014 they had Bo Wallace. Bo Wallace beat them. So it's one of those things where you have to. I remember, Vanderbilt's athletic director or president was asked, why they end up hiring Derek Mason. He just thought that, everybody was trying to, kind of get more offense to blow past Nick Saban. He felt the way to do it was to slow down Alabama, and then, which is not going to work because you're Vanderbilt at the end of the day. But when you look at what you need to do to win football games at the highest level right now and get into that playoff and beat those teams. I mean, like, that's what Ohio State's been sluggish ever since they won it with Cardell Jones, is the fact that their offense hasn't really been as impressive as it was, the first few years that Urban Meyer was there. Willie's going to run that sort of stuff. And with the athletes that he can get by being, like he says, it's Florida State. What else do I got to say? It just makes it feel there's no reason not to feel confident right now.
Yeah, and again, we'll see about 18. I'm not confident that 18 is going to be anything approaching a championship year, but I think you build that culture and you bring in some real players. And then, I really trust his defensive coordinator. I think he's going to do a good job. But you're going to play a style, again, where you can't expect 31-6. That's not going to happen, or 24-11 or 12. Well, nobody scores 11. How would anybody score 11 or 12? 24-13. You're not going to have a lot of those games because you're going to give up points because your defense is going to be on the field more. So that's going to happen. But you can limit points, and if your offense is doing what it's doing, you can win games 45-24. Those are allowed. Other teams do that. Not everybody's Alabama where they blow teams out 51-6. Nobody is, really. So I just think perception has to change a little bit about what a good defense is. But also, if you're winning by 20, 25 points, that's the key. Again, going back to the Wake and Duke games, even more than the losses, the Wake and Duke games of last year.
Last play to win.
Last play to win where you're only up by a score in each of those games, and you kind of drove up and down the field against Duke, but you only put up whatever you put up, 17 points. I mean, that's absurd. Florida State should be scoring 17 points in a quarter against Duke. There used to be games where they'd score 70. So that's changed, I think, and that's what people are kind of really excited about, is the prospect of 50 and 60-point games again, because you will just overwhelm some teams. And you will jump on them early, and they will quit, and you can put up 50, 60 points. Your backups might be able to get to play. That stuff used to happen at Florida State a lot. All that stuff I think people are really excited about, but I don't think Alabama's what he needs to worry about right now. Getting back to your question, right. I think Clemson's what he needs to worry about, and more than anything, like Louisville. Worry about Louisville. Get past Louisville.
They fumble the ball against Louisville.
Well, but you lost 2 in a row against Louisville. I know they had the Heisman winner that I believe – if Willie Taggart was the coach at Florida State, Lamar Jackson would have been at Florida State.
Ooh,
but that's a whole other
that's
topic.
For next week. Yeah, let's put that in the drawer of ideas.
But go beat Louisville and Boston College. Then we start worrying about Clemson and Alabama. But I don't think Florida State's far away.
All right, that's what I like to hear. All right, you can hear us next week when we come back on Monday. We'll talk about baseball and basketball, right? We'll have media availability later today to talk to 11 and a basketball game on Saturday that hopefully the Noles will win. For Corey, I'm Aslan. Thanks so much for listening to Wake Up War Chant. It's ESPN 97.9 in Tallahassee. Jeff Cameron Show coming up at 3.
Darn pop-ups and video ads.
Are you wasting your time again on clickbait FSU updates that are bloated down with ads?
Yeah. And after crashing my computer, the information isn't even up to date. You're on warchant.com. What's really going on with the Seminoles?
For the real scoop, you'll need to get your own War Chant subscription.
What's it cost?
Free. There's a 30-day trial offer right now.
You know I like free. Sign me up.
Use the promo code WARCHANT30. That's WARCHANT30. Nobody has more accurate and timely information on the Noles than warchant.com.
Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole source.